Your soulmate is sending this final message. Please read it before midnight. My beloved child, do not move past this moment too quickly, because what you are about to hear carries the weight of words that have been held back for far too long. Something has been waiting at the edge of your awareness, quietly asking for your attention, and tonight it feels closer than ever. Before midnight passes, before another day closes over the questions you have carried in silence, there is a message your heart needs to hear. Not because a clock controls your destiny, and not because you should be afraid of what happens when the hour changes, but because this is the moment in this story when everything that has remained unspoken begins to rise to the surface. Your soulmate has been carrying words they could not easily say, feelings they tried to organize, memories they tried to ignore, and one final message has formed inside them with such emotional force that even they can no longer pretend it is not there. They have imagined speaking to you more times than you know. In quiet rooms. During ordinary moments. While staring at a screen and wondering whether they should type your name. While trying to focus on something completely unrelated and suddenly remembering the smallest detail about you. A look. A sentence. The way your energy changed when you were disappointed but tried not to show it. The way you offered warmth when you could have chosen distance. The way you disappeared into your own silence whenever you felt that explaining yourself would only make things heavier. They noticed more than they admitted. And tonight, in this fictional revelation, heaven is drawing your attention not only to the message they wish they could send, but to everything that happened inside them before those words were formed. Because this message did not begin tonight. It began the first time your soulmate realized you were not as easy to forget as they expected. They believed distance would simplify everything. They thought time would quiet what they felt. They convinced themselves that if they stayed busy enough, distracted enough, guarded enough, eventually your presence would become just another memory. But something unexpected happened. Instead of becoming smaller, the memory of you began changing shape. What once felt confusing started becoming clear. What once frightened them started looking precious. What they once questioned began feeling like something they may have misunderstood while it was still close enough to touch. And there is something they regret. Not one dramatic moment. Not one obvious mistake. Something quieter. They regret all the times they assumed your silence meant you did not care. That is one of the truths they have been sitting with. There were moments when you became quiet because you were tired of proving what was already sincere. Moments when you stepped back because you did not want to force yourself into a place where you were uncertain you were wanted. Moments when your soulmate expected you to chase, explain, convince, or fight harder, and when you did not, they told themselves a story about you that was easier to believe than the truth. They thought, perhaps, that you were emotionally distant. Maybe you had changed. Maybe you had other priorities. Maybe the connection meant more to them than it did to you. But eventually, something challenged that belief. Perhaps it was something someone said. Perhaps it was a memory that returned at exactly the wrong time. Perhaps it was simply the way they began comparing your actions to the actions of everyone else around them. Whatever triggered it, they started looking backward with different eyes. And suddenly they noticed something that unsettled them deeply. you had shown care in ways they failed to recognize when it was happening. You remembered things they forgot telling you. You noticed when their mood changed. You gave space when they were overwhelmed. You tried to protect their dignity even when you were hurt. You may not have expressed everything perfectly, but there had been consistency inside your heart that they had overlooked because they were waiting for love to arrive in a form they already understood. That realization created the first line of the final message. I see it now. Those are the words sitting beneath everything else. I see it now. I see what you were trying to give me. I see what you were trying not to say. I see the patience behind your distance. I see the tenderness behind your boundaries. I see how often you cared without making a performance of caring. I see how many times you swallowed your own disappointment so the situation would not become uglier than it already felt. But your soulmate does not stop there. Because once they saw your side more clearly, another question began haunting them. What if I understood too late? That question has become heavier than they expected. They wonder whether you have already changed. Whether the version of you who once waited for them still exists. Whether the door they assumed would remain open forever has slowly begun closing without making a sound. And perhaps the most painful part for them is realizing that you may not even be angry anymore. Anger would almost be easier. Anger would mean fire remained. But there is a kind of peace people sometimes reach after carrying disappointment for too long, and your soulmate is frightened that you may be approaching that place. The place where you stop demanding answers. The place where you no longer check for signs. The place where you become tired of translating mixed signals into hope. The place where your heart quietly decides, I can love someone and still stop waiting for them. That possibility has shaken them. And this is where the message grows more personal. If you are becoming tired of me, I understand. They have rehearsed those words internally. Not because they want you to leave, but because a part of them feels they may have given you reasons to. They know there were moments when you needed clarity and received uncertainty. Moments when you hoped for reassurance and encountered silence. Moments when you wondered whether your connection was real while they stood somewhere between fear and desire, wanting you but afraid of what wanting you might require from them. Their struggle was not always about you. Much of it was about what loving you awakened inside them. You made them confront parts of themselves they had spent years avoiding. Their fear of rejection. Their fear of becoming dependent on someone emotionally. Their fear that love could become another place where they lose control. Their fear of being seen clearly enough that someone might eventually decide they are too complicated to choose. So they did something humans often do when something matters too much. They hesitated. They created distance. They acted less affected than they truly were. And the strange part is that the more important you became, the harder it became for them to behave naturally around the connection. Their feelings deepened while their behavior became more confusing. Their attachment grew while their communication became less certain. They wanted reassurance but were afraid to ask for it. They wanted your attention but sometimes pretended they did not notice when you gave it. This contradiction exhausted them. There were nights when they almost reached out. One of those nights matters more than the others. They opened a conversation with you, stared at the empty space where words could have gone, and imagined everything they wanted to say. They imagined admitting that they missed you. They imagined telling you that something reminded them of you earlier that day. They imagined asking the question they were almost afraid to know the answer to, "Do I still have a place in your heart?" But they did not send it. They closed the screen. And immediately regretted it. That unfinished message remained in their thoughts because it represented something larger. It showed them how fear had become stronger than honesty. They began realizing that if they continued waiting for the perfect moment to become courageous, there might eventually be no moment left. That is why this final message carries urgency. Not deadline urgency. Heart urgency. The urgency of someone realizing that silence also makes decisions. Every day they say nothing, something changes. Every time they assume you will understand without explanation, another layer of distance can form. Every moment they wait for certainty before becoming vulnerable, they risk losing something that can only be discovered through vulnerability. And tonight, spiritually and symbolically, the message reaches another layer. I was hoping you would somehow know. Your soulmate wishes you could have known what was happening beneath their behavior. They wish you could have heard the conversations inside their head. They wish you could have seen how differently they behaved around your memory than around everyone else. They wish you could have seen the strange little moments when your name changed the atmosphere. Someone mentions a place you once spoke about and suddenly they become quiet. A song carries a familiar emotion and they remember something unfinished between you. A stranger laughs in a way that reminds them of your laugh and they feel that unexpected pull inside their chest. They may appear completely normal outwardly while something private opens inside them. And there is one memory in particular they keep returning to. It was not necessarily a dramatic memory. That is what makes it powerful. Perhaps it was a conversation where you were both relaxed. Perhaps you said something funny. Perhaps there was a moment where neither of you needed to perform or protect yourselves. Your soulmate remembers how natural it felt. They remember thinking, maybe only for a second, that being around you felt strangely familiar. At the time, they did not understand why. Now they do. It was peace. Not excitement alone. Not attraction alone. Peace. And peace is rare. That is another truth they discovered after distance entered the story. They met other energies. Other personalities. Other conversations. Other distractions. Some were interesting. Some were exciting. Some temporarily helped them forget what they were avoiding. But there was something missing. The sense of being understood without needing to explain every detail. The feeling that someone noticed the person beneath the performance. They began recognizing that what they experienced with you was not valuable because it was perfect. It was valuable because beneath the complications there was something honest. And honesty frightened them. Because if the connection was real, then losing it would be real too. That possibility has now become impossible to ignore. There is another sentence they want to place in this final message. I am sorry for the version of you I created in my mind when I was afraid. That may be the deepest sentence yet. Because fear made them misinterpret you. When you stepped back, they thought you were leaving. When you set boundaries, they thought you were punishing them. When you needed reassurance, they sometimes interpreted it as pressure. When you protected yourself, they wondered whether your feelings had weakened. They did not always see your actions as they were. Sometimes they saw them through old wounds, old disappointments, old experiences that existed long before you entered their life. And now they are beginning to understand something important. You should not have had to pay for pain you did not create. That realization humbled them. It forced them to reconsider moments they once judged quickly. Perhaps there was a conversation where they became defensive when you were only trying to be understood. Perhaps there was a moment they assumed the worst instead of asking you what you meant. Perhaps they pulled away after sensing emotional intensity because intensity reminded them of something painful from their past. Whatever the specific details in this fictional story, the spiritual lesson is the same. People sometimes react to the present using memories from the past. And your soulmate now knows that some of their reactions were never truly about you. They were about survival patterns. Patterns that once protected them but later began preventing them from receiving love. This understanding is changing them. Slowly. Imperfectly. But genuinely. They have started asking themselves harder questions. Why did I expect them to prove their love while hiding mine? Why did I want reassurance while giving uncertainty? Why did I interpret vulnerability as danger? Why did I believe protecting myself meant never speaking honestly? And then came the question they could not escape. What if the person I was protecting myself from was never actually trying to hurt me? That question opened something inside them. The message became longer. I wish I had trusted what I felt instead of questioning every good thing. Your soulmate has spent time analyzing this connection because analysis feels safer than surrender. They wanted evidence. Guarantees. Signs. Perfect timing. Clear outcomes. But love rarely arrives with legal documents promising there will be no pain. Love asks people to enter uncertainty. And that was where they struggled. You may have noticed it. Whenever the connection became more emotionally meaningful, something shifted. They could become warmer and then suddenly distant. Open and then guarded. Hopeful and then cautious. You may have wondered why. Now you understand. The closer you came to the place in them that wanted you, the closer you also came to the place terrified of losing you. That is why the final message is not simply romantic. It is confessional. It contains regret. It contains realization. It contains longing. But it also contains accountability. And there is something else. Something your soulmate has not admitted even to themselves completely. They have imagined what would happen if you truly moved on. Not casually. Not as a temporary distraction. Truly moved on. If one day someone entered your life who did not hesitate where they hesitated. Someone who recognized your value without requiring distance to understand it. Someone who gave you the clarity you had once wanted from them. That image hurts them more than they expected. They imagine you laughing with someone else. feeling safe with someone else, sharing your thoughts with someone else, building ordinary memories with someone who did not take your presence for granted. And somewhere inside those imagined scenes is the realization that they could become the person who once had access to your heart but did not know what to do with it. That possibility is what finally breaks through their pride. Because pride only survives while someone believes there is unlimited time. Once time feels real, pride becomes expensive. And your soulmate is beginning to understand the cost. This is why another sentence has entered the message. If I still have one honest chance to speak, I do not want to waste it. Notice what they are not saying. They are not demanding that you forget everything. They are not asking you to pretend nothing happened. They are not asking you to reopen a door simply because they finally became ready to knock. There is humility in this message now. They understand that your feelings matter too. That your boundaries matter. That your healing matters. That you may not be standing in the same emotional place where they last left you. This awareness scares them, but it also makes what they want to say more sincere. Because now they are no longer asking, how do I make sure I do not lose you? They are asking, how do I finally become honest with you even if honesty does not guarantee the outcome I want? That is growth. The kind heaven celebrates in this story. Not possession. Not control. Truth. Because real love does not force. Real love reveals. Real love speaks clearly and allows another heart the dignity of choosing freely. And your soulmate is beginning to understand that loving you properly means respecting your freedom, not only desiring your presence. There is another hidden part of the final message. Something softer. I hope life has been gentle with you when I was not there. They have wondered about your quiet battles. The things you never told them. The nights you may have been overwhelmed while pretending you were fine. The responsibilities you carried without announcing them. The moments you needed encouragement but decided to keep going alone. They wonder whether they failed to notice how much strength it took for you to continue showing warmth while fighting things privately. And there is guilt there. Because perhaps they made your emotional burden heavier during a time when life was already demanding enough. They did not know everything. But they sense it now. There was more happening inside you than they understood. More exhaustion. More self-doubt. More responsibility. More longing for peace. And somewhere along the way, you may have reached a place where you stopped asking other people to understand and started becoming the person who understood yourself. That changed your energy. Your soulmate noticed. Maybe not consciously at first. But they felt it. You became less available to confusion. Less willing to chase inconsistent energy. Less interested in proving yourself. You began carrying yourself differently. And while part of them admired it, another part became afraid. Because they realized you were learning how to live without the answer they once represented. That is when the urgency truly began. Not because they suddenly wanted attention. Because they suddenly understood that your growth might take you somewhere their hesitation could no longer follow. And perhaps this is where you need to hear something too. Your growth was never meant to make someone panic. It was meant to bring you home to yourself. You are not becoming stronger so somebody will finally choose you. You are becoming stronger so you can recognize what chooses you with honesty. You are not healing to prove someone wrong. You are healing so confusion no longer feels like love simply because it feels familiar. You are not learning boundaries because your heart has become cold. You are learning boundaries because your heart is valuable. And your soulmate, in this fictional divine message, is beginning to see that version of you. They are realizing that the person they once assumed would always be emotionally available is becoming someone who can walk away peacefully when peace requires it. That realization created another sentence. I do not want to return to your life with the same version of myself that created the distance. Read that again in your heart. They know words alone are not enough. Anyone can say, I miss you. Anyone can say, I was wrong. Anyone can say, I have changed. But your soulmate knows that if they truly want another chapter, their actions would have to become different. Communication would have to become clearer. Consistency would have to replace guessing. Courage would have to replace hesitation. And perhaps most importantly, they would have to stop expecting love to survive on potential. Potential can inspire a beginning. It cannot sustain a relationship. What sustains love is presence, effort, honesty, accountability, patience, and the willingness to repair what has been damaged instead of pretending it never happened. Your soulmate is learning this now. But there is one truth they have not yet spoken. A truth that sits beneath the entire final message. It concerns the real reason they disappeared emotionally when the connection mattered most. You may have assumed it was lack of interest. It was not. You may have assumed someone else mattered more. That was not the deepest reason either. You may have assumed they became tired of the connection. No. The truth is more complicated. They pulled away because something happened inside them that made staying close to you feel emotionally dangerous. Not dangerous because you were dangerous. Dangerous because they felt themselves losing the ability to remain detached. They could feel themselves caring more than they planned. And there was one specific moment when they realized it. One moment that changed their understanding of you completely. They have replayed that moment again and again. It was the moment they realized that if you walked away, they would not simply miss your attention. They would miss you. Your mind. Your voice. Your presence. Your way of seeing things. Your strange little habits. Your ability to make ordinary moments feel meaningful. And once they understood that, fear entered the connection differently. Because losing attention is inconvenient. Losing someone who matters can change a person. So they guarded themselves. Unfortunately, the very thing they did to avoid losing you may have helped create the distance they feared. That irony is not lost on them now. And this is why tonight's message feels final. Not final because love necessarily ends here. Final because the old way of handling this connection cannot continue. Something must change. Either honesty enters, or silence becomes the answer. Either courage appears, or distance becomes permanent. Either someone speaks truth, or both hearts continue imagining what could have happened. Your soulmate knows this. Their message is reaching its most vulnerable point. They want to tell you something they have never said clearly. Something they almost sent once before. Something they deleted because seeing the words on the screen made the feeling too real. The sentence began with your name. Then came 6 words. 6 words that frightened them enough to erase everything. Those 6 words have returned tonight. They have been sitting in their mind for hours. And the strangest part is that this time they are no longer trying to delete them. They are finally allowing themselves to understand what those words mean. Because those 6 words reveal why they never fully let go. They reveal why every attempt to replace the connection felt incomplete. They reveal why your silence affects them more than they admit. They reveal what they truly wanted from you all along. And before the final message ends, they know they must finally say them. But just as those words rise to the surface, another truth appears beside them, one your soulmate did not expect, one that could change the meaning of everything they thought they were about to confess. Because they have recently discovered something about you. Something you never explained. Something that makes them look back at your entire connection differently. And when they understood what you had been silently carrying all this time, the first thing they whispered was, "How did I not see this before?"